Unmute.
Unmute and see if somebody can hear you.
Back to this. Good.
Oops.
Audio check.
Howdy.
They're live on YouTube too.
Yeah, I can.
Hey, is the audio working?
Yes.
I
can hear you.
I can hear you fine.
Liz, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good.
All right, guys, I got 7 o'clock and we'll go ahead and get started. Can everybody hear my audio?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
All right. Well, everyone, welcome to the June Cabot Planning Commission. We're going to start off with a word of prayer. Commissioner Carlisle is going to start us off in prayer. Commissioner Carlisle. Jordan, go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. Please pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this life. Yes, sir. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this life you've given each of us, this beautiful city that we live in. We ask as decision makers on the guidance and wisdom that we need to make educated decisions to impact future generations in a positive manner. Father, we ask you please be with our country during this unprecedented times. Keep us healthy and be with all those who need you, Lord. In your most holy and precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Carlisle. And join me for the pledge here, guys. If you would stand up, face the flag. I pledge the United States and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Go ahead and do our roll call for the Planning Commission meeting. Kim? Commissioner Byrd?
Here.
Carlisle.
Commissioner Carlisle?
Ward.
Commissioner Ward, you on? All right, keep going to.
Young.
Here.
Prater.
Prater, you here? You got your mute on.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Mowdy. Here. Urban.
All right, we do have a quorum. Let's go ahead and go into the approval of our minutes from our last month's Planning Commission meeting in May. If I can get a correction or of those minutes.
Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Motion to approve from Carlisle. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second from, was that Prater?
Prater.
All right, roll call, please.
Byrd.
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Young.
Yes.
Prater.
Yes.
Mowdy. Yes.
All right. So let's go ahead and get approval for the minutes from our Board of Adjustment meeting. This was back in March, was our last Board of Adjustment meeting. If I've got any corrections or comments, if not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion from Byrd. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mowdy. Roll call, please.
Byrd,
Yes.
Harwell,
Yes.
Prater,
Yes.
Mowdy,
Yes.
do you need mine for 5? Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and get into the Board of Adjustment meeting. First item of business, new business is, Kim, would you go ahead and kick us off here?
69 Sycamore Circle, appeal a notice of violation in regards to payment requirements.
And Kevin Gambrill, if you're on, if you want to go ahead and give us a staff report, please, on that.
Actually, this was an administrative item that was provided by staff. I don't have a formalized report for this. I do know that the property had received a notice of violation for installing basically a gravel drive, and I believe the code and city standards that they have it as durable pavement. But I'm not sure if Ms. Nobles is in the room at this time or if she has anything else to add. But essentially, the applicant is seeking an appealing of an administrative decision, essentially. And you can see a lot of those existing conditions and that gravel improvement that the property owner had installed. And this did receive a violation notice.
Okay.
Chad, I do have the information on that.
Yeah, please go ahead.
In your packets, you should have received a short note or memo from my office showing the current state of what the resident has at his house at 69 Sycamore Circle. He installed a gravel driveway next to his existing concrete driveway. A notice of violation tag was left on his front door. The resident was given 14 days to correct the violation. The resident did call my office to dispute the notice of violation, to claim that his gravel driveway was installed prior to March of 2018, and that he just was resurfacing the gravel that was already there. As you can see from the Google images that I supplied, that I found no evidence that there was any gravel driveway prior to 2018, March of 2018. In our code, it states that any parking surface has to be a hard surface driveway, whether it's asphalt or concrete. When this ordinance was passed, there was a stipulation in the ordinance that stated if you had a gravel driveway at a single family or a 2-family dwelling constructed prior to March 1st of 2018, then you could continue with that gravel driveway. But from the Google images going back to February of 2014, I show there was no existing gravel driveway prior to March of 2018. I've also supplied you a picture from the that the code enforcement, the code compliance officer took as well on May 22nd when the notice was left. Then I also had another picture taken on June 17th to show what the current state is of the driveway.
Laura, these 2 images here that we have on the screen.
Those 4 images that you have in the slideshow, that image that you have pulled up right now is the current state of the driveway as of June 17th.
Okay.
So the resident is just appealing that the that he should be able to keep his gravel driveway because he stated to me on the phone that there was existing gravel prior to May of 2018, but I could not find any evidence of a gravel driveway dating all the way back to February of 2014.
Okay. All right, is that all of yours, Laura?
Yes.
Okay. All right, is the applicant is here? Would you mind coming up to the microphone and stating your name and address?
My name is Brad Hopkins.
Mr. Hopkins, is there any evidence that you have to dispute the current condition that it was in there prior to 2018?
No, sir. We purchased the property in September 2019. We closed in November 2019. All I know is where I parked my truck is where the gravel pad was. Parking it there, it got muddy. And then all gravel surface. All gravel on top of that. I had no record. There was a big pad, but that's all.
I see. You added the current SB2 gravel that's there in the images. It was previously gravel, but then you added additional gravel
Yes,
on
sir.
top of that.
Dug up that 22 inches.
Mr. Chairman, he's going to have to really speak into that microphone for any of us to hear him.
Yes.
Sorry, you can get really close to that, like you're gonna sing.
All right.
Get a
what I was-
little bit closer. See if you can pull that up there.
Just as high as it goes.
Can y'all hear him when he's like that?
No, I
I
cannot.
mean, he pretty much has to have the microphone on his mouth. I know that's not very sanitary, but those microphones you have to.
Can y'all hear that? Say, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
That's better.
If you wouldn't mind, repeat that.
All right, so I have no evidence that the gravel driveway was installed prior to 2018. I just know what I saw and parking a truck on the location about 1 to 2 inches down, it would get muddy and then it would stop sinking. And I found a few gravel chips across the span where I was parking my truck. So I went ahead and resurfaced off the condition that there's multiple other gravel driveways within Cabot city limits. One sharing the same dimensions as me, being two doors down from my property, also down the Sycamore Circle. And that was the justification for that. Also within that ordinance, it has a heavy equipment section. I do have a competition vehicle, I do for audio competitions. We heavily modify vehicles. My van will weigh in at 10 to 12,000 pounds. I do not believe that my existing concrete driveway would support that. So with off-street parking, that is an issue. Along with parking my current vehicles off-street, security is a concern. I would like for my vehicles to be seen by my security cameras.
Commissioner Chairman, if I may speak on that driveway that he was talking about that is just down the street from him.
Yes.
There is a gravel driveway that is at 64 Sycamore Circle that I do have evidence you can see in the actual images, some of the images that I have in my report, that 64 Sycamore Circle did have a gravel driveway prior to 2018. Also in Mr. Hopkins' letter, he talks about 2 locations on Pond Street and 1 on Liberty Street. Both of those driveways on Pond Street also exist prior to March of 2018. The one on Liberty, we already have a case on that one that we are working with the homeowner on because they have other violations as well as a violation of having a gravel driveway.
Okay, and I understand the need for the current ordinance reads that we require a dust-proof surface, correct, on the driveways, which a gravel driveway does not comply with.
It has to be a hard surface, whether it's whether it's asphalt or concrete. it has to be a hard surface.
Okay,
That's our pavement requirement.
right. I'm trying to brainstorm here for the applicant. Is there a way to provide a top coat seal on top of the existing gravel to make it a hard surface, or some type of chip and seal or something that would meet the letter of the code and not be too terribly expensive of a driveway addition versus concrete? I think, concrete would be pretty expensive, but
Concrete driveway would cost about $3,200 along with excavation of the current property for setting.
I'm not able to hear.
I'm sorry if you could speak.
Concrete would cost $3,500 to install at the property with excavation, proper gravel pad underneath the concrete, and then forming and setting would take about at least a month of construction at the house. Well, not construction, but a week of construction, and then pouring the concrete, allowing it to set to a park off street versus the gravel, which only costs $350 to install, along with landscaping timbers.
We are able to hear that?
Barely.
Basically we've got a situation where we've got several places around town that have gravel areas next to concrete, and I know the code's requiring this post 2018. I just feel like we need to come up with some type of thoughtful compromise to help homeowners be able to widen their driveways without breaking the bank.
Can I ask a question real quick? I know I'm new to this group and I'm trying to figure it all out at the same time, but the one thing I see from all the pictures is there's, even in his picture, like you said, we got to be thoughtful about things and we got to look to see how we can make things more efficient. In that one picture that we have there, right next door to him is somebody that's parked right in the middle of their yard. And there's multiple pictures from each year where if you look, there are vehicles parked just in the grass. And so I guess my question is, where does it stop and how do we determine what's legal and what's not legal? Look at the next door with the trailer and then look at some of those other pictures where there's just vehicles parked in the yards.
Right. Would that not institute a violation? So they're parking trailers, vehicles in yards adjacent to that.
Yeah, and I do believe that neighbor actually does have a case on that particular trailer being parked there.
And so you cannot park in a yard, correct? Period.
You can technically park in a yard, you just cannot you cannot use it as your permanent parking spot. So if you have a get together at your house and you have people pull into your yard to park so that they're not parking on the street, that is okay. You just can't make your yard a permanent parking spot unless you produce it to be a hard surface. Because if you start making ruts, then you're going back to making that a permanent surface parking spot.
Yeah, and Commissioner Mowdy, this is an effort to help sort of beautify our neighborhoods and areas to keep everybody having concrete or asphalt or some hard permanent surface, and to encourage that type of use instead of parking on grass or.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I understand that. I'm just saying that all kinds of pictures are showing it, so it's one of those things we've got to make sure we keep the rules equal, because it looks like that trailer's been there for a while.
That's right.
Chad, Chad, I drove through several of those streets in that subdivision, and there were other property owners that had extended their driveway areas and they had used the concrete surface. So we need to keep in mind to be sympathetic to those property owners that have gone and tried to stay within our code also.
Yeah.
That's right. And if we allow this variance, then you also set a precedence for just allowing that all over town. And so that's what we have to be careful about as commissioners.
And remember, whether it's a variance or a waiver, their property has to be unique, and there has to be, not monetarily, but there has to be something unique about their property that differentiates it from others, that necessitates the hardship or the practical difficulty for compliance.
Right. I mean, I'm super sympathetic of the cost issue. Yeah, gravel's much more economical solution, but it's according to code, we really need to stick with keeping our neighborhoods beautified and dust free and helping everybody keep proper values of their neighborhood.
Given the norm in my neighborhood, as she already stated, in Google Images, like you stated, everyone does park because it's the neighborhood is 30 years old, so everyone has single car driveways.
Yeah, narrow driveway.
Very narrow, you can't fit more than one car on there. So multiple cars park in their yard and he says permanent parking spot. One neighbor tore up Sycamore Street. Street itself has asphalt missing the way it's approached their yard. So to combat that is why I installed the gravel driveway, copying other people in my neighborhood who have gravel driveways, not trying to value the aesthetics of the neighborhood, but it is a 30-year-old neighborhood, and the gravel that talking to other neighbors is of people versus taken away. Given that multiple houses, multiple properties within the city have a very similar auxiliary parking pad attached to their concrete, I feel like that should be looked at because you have the city, houses larger houses out that particular time of that, and I'm looking at those paths, I'm looking at those, but half the city already has these auxiliary parking pads, and the other half are just parking on their grass because they don't want to offer up money for that additional concrete. And then in my neighborhood, which is dated 30 years old, parking driveway on their grass.
Did everybody hear that?
No.
Yeah, I'll sum it up. He was just talking about the fact that the gravel that he put down is an improvement over what a lot of folks are doing in their neighborhood by just parking directly on the grass, making ruts, what have you. That the gravel is an improvement over that. Yeah, pretty much sum up what you.
And it sounds to me like I could have gotten around this instead of trying to improve my property, just rotate my vehicles from spot to spot to never create a rut in my yard and just claim it as yard. I'm really trying to do the best for my property, but I do sell it.
Sure. Laura, were you able to hear any of that as well?
I mean, I heard a little bit of it, and the city's not negating that he's not improving his property. And by all means, we don't want people parking in the grass and creating ruts. So yes, we are trying to work with what we can, but I mean, the gravel driveway is just strictly, completely against the code that we have to make it a hard surface. So, I mean, I completely understand that he's trying to, number one, he has a single car driveway and he doesn't want to park in the street. But his main options are to make this a hard surface to be able to have this second driveway for him to park in.
Right. The code requires
The
dust-free
code requires it, correct?
concrete or asphalt.
Everyone else is just grandfathered in.
If it's
It's not that everyone else is grandfathered in, that the driveways that you were in particular stating about, I have done the research and they were there prior to March 1st of 2018. And then the code, when it was written, those driveways that were gravel already prior to March 1st of 2018 were acceptable to stay.
so they were grandfathered in. Right. As I was coming up Pine Street, I was looking at half a dozen that were, people barking in their yard as well. But
Laura, I have a question. This is Kevin Gambrell. If now the grandfathering, of course, means that those existing driveways that predate the 2018 ordinance, they can't be expanded, correct? They can't. Right. They have to stay exactly the way they are.
Exactly how they are. If they expand, they have to conform to the current code.
that's right.
Okay, what about the heavy equipment portion? Section C
The heavy equipment portion he's talking about, section C, Laura.
of the 2018 code. What justifies heavy equipment? Because I can provide a weight scale of how much my van will weigh later this year. We have a solid steel cage, heavy equipment inside of it. It's a competition vehicle. It's not going to be used for work. It's just going to be used as a hobby.
I mean, it's still off-street parking, and we would require.
Well, the off-street parking in the ordinance of 2018, it has 4 exceptions. Gravel driveways prior to 2018, gravel or properties with a 70-foot greater setback, the heavy equipment, and I forgot the 4th one. There are 4 conditions that you can have a gravel driveway because of cost.
Laura, do you have that in front of you?
Yeah, he's talking about where it says areas are used for parking and storage of large equipment which could damage the parking surface. But what heavy equipment are you stating that you park there? I mean, we've always seen it's just been your pickup truck that's been parked on the gravel surface.
It's forethought. It's what I will be parking here. It is a competition audio van. I travel the nation going to audio competitions to see who can be the loudest. With that, there's a lot of modifications. Concrete inside of doors, steel cages, solid steel walls, and just basically every inch of this has to be as hard and solid as possible, which adds up weight very quickly, along with the subwoofers, amplifiers, and batteries to support that. So my last vehicle weighed in at 9,000 pounds, and I'm building this one heavier and stronger, so I'm estimating it to be between 10 and 12,000 pounds. It will be done later this year.
Yeah, Chad, I'm not sure we could approve anything based on a projected future use on anything
Right.
like
This is
that,
what
to be
the
honest with you.
current stage is.
I could come park it on my property right now if that would make it easier. I do have more than one competition vehicle. The reason it's off street, it's not at my property is because it's at the shop being worked on.
Laura, what about this? I feel like there's a couple different things that need to be discussed. What if we table this item and follow up with a meeting with Mr. Hopkins, maybe Kevin, Mayor, and just talk about this as a city issue? I mean, it's all over the city. I know we don't want to start precedents, but it's maybe something.
I completely understand that. I have 2 other particular cases that I've already had to work the same time frame, and one of the residents has already taken care of their issue because they didn't know of the code. The other resident, and this is in a different part of the town, they are working to take care of their gravel driveway as well to meet code. So, I mean, I have other cases that are in the same situation, and they are working to meet code. I'm not saying that I'm not willing to work with Mr. Hopkins, but I'm not sure what other remedies we can come up with to let him to keep the gravel driveway.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Mr.
All right.
Chairman, could I interject here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, he's got gravel down there now. What I see is starting a better base to put concrete on later or asphalt. Can we offer up a grace period here for, it's going to be, how's he going to take this out now and put grass back without the cost of that? Is it possible that he can, work this in and then we give a grace period to have it asphalted or concreted at a future date?
But I don't know if there's a time restriction. Is there one for?
I mean, one we can offer.
I mean, I don't see why y'all couldn't give an extension of 30 days or to have it hard surfaced within 30 days. That way you're not putting the hardship on him because we, as the code compliance, we gave him 14 days. We understand that 14 days is financially can be a hardship on people. So when they call, we give them an extension, say, okay, we can give you 30 days to have this taken care of. So if y'all want to give him an extension of 30 days or 45 days to have this hard surface laid, I don't have an issue with that at all.
Well, we need to keep moving here on our agenda. I think that's a good compromise to let's offer an extension of 30 days. Meanwhile, Mr. Hopkins, if you want to have a follow-up meeting with me and the mayor or Laura and talk about any other options, we can certainly do that.
Currently, the extension does not interest me with current conditions of the world and budgeting. Surfacing that, especially with concrete or even asphalt, is not within my personal budget. But I would like to have a meeting with you or the mayor, whatever can be done to kind of advocate multiple people and have it to be able to do something similar to what I've done without breaking code. I understand that code was broken, and I was unaware of that because talking to other people with gravel driveway, they didn't have that was prior to 2018, so I wasn't aware that this was going to be an issue, or I wouldn't have done it. I would have just rotated vehicles and not have had this issue. But it does seem like an improvement, and I understand the dust being an issue, but I do know you can buy epoxy fairly cheaply at Home Depot, 5-gallon buckets, and do a small coating surface, which should completely seal a chipped gravel driveway like mine, and it'd be more affordable than any of those, but it still has a gravel appearance. And if the appearance is really the issue, then I understand, but if the dust is the issue, like you're saying, then that should be an alternative.
Dust-free and hard surface, so I mean that may be worth a shot.
I don't want to proceed, and that's why also if they included the pictures of a pile of gravel in my yard, I just stopped putting effort into it because I didn't want to proceed with anything if I was going to do anything to take this out. Because like it was said earlier, taking that out, I mean it's 5 inches. Close. It's 5 inches thick currently, so that will take a lot of time and a lot of effort, a lot harder than just putting it in. So I didn't want to add any more to it, and that's why that's sitting there. As soon as I got an answer today, that was going to get taken care of also. But as I said, the asphalt or concrete is not going to be an option, but an epoxy seal on top of it would be an option for me.
I think that's maybe one of those options we talk about with mayor and just see if there's other solutions that we might be able to offer residents. But let's go. Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. Appreciate it. You want to put that microphone back in there. All right, commissioners, I think you guys have, I don't know if you could hear any of that, but apologize. I'd like to go ahead and get a vote on this or get a motion.
I'll make a motion to this.
I got a motion to approve.
Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Carlisle, and roll call vote, please.
Bird,
No.
Carlisle,
No.
Prater,
No.
Melton,
No.
All right. that variance request is denied. So would recommend let's have a follow-up meeting with the mayor and just what options might be. Look into the epoxy, and we'll maybe see if we can come back together and figure out it. If you want to reach back out to Laura Nobles, and we can set up a meeting.
Okay.
I'm out next week, but we can probably do it the week after that. Okay.
So just keep the gravel as it is.
Well, if you wouldn't mind follow up with Laura Nobles, and then we can set that meeting up.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. All right. Next item of business, Kim.
Special use permit from R1 to C2 with special use, McClellan Storage Development, Highway 367, a part of the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 7, T-4-N, R-9-W, Whitlow Engineering.
Great job, Kim. All right. Kevin, do you have this one, or Laura, is this one yours again?
I do have a report. It's unique in that there's one report, but there's two items, one for the Board of Zoning Adjustments and one for the actual Planning Commission agenda, but both deal with the same property. Essentially, you have a concurrent application, which is allowed under Section 4.7 in the UDC for zoning map amendments and special use permits to be applied for concurrently. So I just want to let you know that, Mr. Commissioner, so you understood, sort of the order of operations here.
Okay.
So basically, you have a combined application. Since this is the Board of Zoning Adjustments formally, we can review this as a special permit use, which under the UDC does allow for outdoor storage or mini storage as a special use permit in the C2 zone. And the applicant is asking also that this property be rezoned to C2. So that's where we're at with respect to the application. You can see that the property is actually much larger than the one that you're showing on the screen. If you go to the vicinity graphic, you can see a larger shot, I think, of the entirety of it. I think it's the one with the land use or the zoning. There you go, right there. So you have the zoning, which is that dark blue line without any fill to it. And then you have the land use, which is the colors. So for this property, it's kind of hard to make out, but those white lines are actually the parcel lines. So you have planned development, or PD, as the land use with some open space and some floodplain on the south side of it. The entirety of the site is actually 26 and change acreage. And they are right now wanting to take up approximately 12 and a quarter acres, which is what you see in that cyan color. So 12 and a quarter acres is what's being requested for both rezoning from R1 to C2 zoning with a special use permit for outdoor storage, specifically mini storage. The CAD files that were submitted to me by the consulting engineer, Mr. Whitlow, is what you're seeing on the screen. They're not exactly the way he would probably symbolize it, but essentially I tried my hand at separating what you're seeing on the screen based on what they want to do now versus what they'd like to do in the future. So the two boxes in red is essentially phase 1 and 2 of the immediate self-storage use that they'd like to do. The black area is what they show, and it's in another one of your pages in your report, as the future storage phases. And then you have roughly 2 and a quarter acres in this pink area. It's a little bit bigger than that, but it kind of gets cut off the top. But it's roughly 2 and a quarter acres residual for this potential future commercial phase. And Mr. Whitlow, if he's here, he can of course qualify whether I've presented the information accurately in this graphic, but some of the other graphics in your report do show it as well. The reason I did this is to show you all where the floodplain was, which you see in light blue shading on the south side. With respect to the stormwater detention, which is that sort of darker pink circle. So that's where they want to do stormwater detention, as well as some RV parking, which they show in this sort of yellow lines there. But this is what we're reviewing right now. So the entirety of this 12.25 acreage, even the area south of here that goes into to the floodplain is all subject to the rezoning request to C2. And it is apparently all what is being requested for the special permit use. So even though there is a portion of this site, roughly 2.25, that is not shown as mini storage, they still would like to have a special use permit applied to the entirety. So that is essentially what you all are looking at. The surrounding land uses, you have an established single family dwelling neighborhood to the north on the opposite side, North 2nd Street. To the south, it's very wooded. It's environmentally constrained in a lot of respects. You have some industrial zoning off to the east. It's I-1 zoned. And then, of course, on the other side of the railroad tracks, it picks up some R1 zone down there. But aside from being very wooded, you do have some non-residential C2 and I-1 immediately off to the east. So the uses aren't necessarily out of line with what's been constructed on this side of North 2nd Street. You do have the existing established neighborhoods on the other side of North 2nd Street. But the land use doesn't provide a tremendous amount of guidance, only to say that it's planned development. So there's no real specified policy land use that says you can't do a C2, or that there's something overarching on a policy end that would say no, or to disqualify this in any way. The staff report doesn't make a recommendation to propose it. There were a few comments that we made with respect to proposed signage, dimensioning of the parking spaces. Those were both addressed. And as a staff review note, and the applicant is aware of it, we simply wanted to make sure that they were aware that if you're going to put RVs anywhere near the floodplain, you do need to make sure that they're operational and that they can comply with federal floodplain guidance. And then there are a few notes in your report that speak to the Board of Zoning adjustments versus the Planning Commission portion of the review. And that is all I have. I'll take any questions if you have.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Whip is not present today.
Here,
unless he's online.
can you hear me, Chad?
Yes.
This
Okay.
is Adam. I am here. I'm audio only and got a screen on another one. And I'm here with Mr. Well in the room here with me too. Answer any questions I can't. But Kevin did an excellent job of explaining the situation. This is we see this as a multi-phase development, primarily a self-storage facility, combination of climate controlled and exterior entrance storage with with the future may hold some possible light retail on the front, but that's sometime in the future. We looked at the zoning options for this. There was the C2 special use or the C3. Of course, with C3 open display, that's a little bit heavy, we felt, for the area. So we thought the C2 special use, being a little bit more restrictive would be probably the highest and best use for the area. We don't see the storage units generating just a ton of traffic. The fact that there is residential neighborhood on the north side is actually kind of what drew the buyer to this lot. That's what mini storages, self-storage units serve. As Kevin stated, this is, I believe we've addressed the comments from the staff to this point, but would be glad to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Adam. And I just want to remind commissioners, this is not a site plan review. This is just Board of Adjustment special use for change in zoning request here. So we're not reviewing the site plan or the preliminary plat at this time. Any questions from the commissioners?
Chad, if I may say that probably in the minutes or on this, we need to reflect that this special use would be obviously contingent on the rezoning of the property, since the rezone will be heard after the special use.
Yeah, I've got that down here in my notes here. Yes, that does need to be a part of the motion. Any questions from the commissioners? If not, I entertain a motion.
Chad, I'll make a motion with the contingencies that Laura addressed.
All right, got a motion approved. Carlisle,
Second.
second from Mowdy. Roll call, please.
Byrd,
Yes.
Carla,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Mowdy,
All right. It is approved. All right, we'll go ahead and adjourn the Board of Adjustment meeting, and we'll get into our Planning Commission meeting here. 7:44. Go ahead and open our public hearing. And the next one here. Maybe Kim, if you want to read out the first item.
rezone from R1 to C2 special use and McClellan storage development, Highway 367.
All right, Kevin, what highlights do we need to hit now here in Planning Commission?
Well, it's the same report. So it's a concurrent report. If you go back to the final page, I think it's last page of the report, it essentially says considerations for the commission. Simply that the action regarding the zoning map amendment is contingent upon the city council approval of the zoning map amendment request, which is something you all are accustomed to. But right now you have a planned development land use. It is not contrary to the request. I will make a point to reference 473 for standards under the special use permit. In carrying out the purpose of the section, the commissioner's considerations shall include, but not be limited to, the following development standards and design specifics. So while it's not site plan review, you are tasked with looking at the appropriateness of these standards and determine in discretion of the Planning Commission for each specific special permit use location. There's a list of A through D. I'm not sure if you'd like me to recite them for you, but it gets into public health, safety, and welfare. The proposed land use is compatible and will not adversely affect other properties in the area where it's proposed to be located. And the proposed use is within the provisions of the special permit uses set out in the use chart, and that the proposed use conforms to all applicable provisions of the code zoning district in which it is to be located. And the use facilitates public convenience at that location. These are all very broad general guidelines, but for the record, they should be known.
Okay, so now we're looking at rezoning from R1 to C2 within that special use that we just approved in the Board of Adjustment.
Correct. In terms of what comes first, technically the zoning has to be enacted first, and then you're allowed to have a special permit use for either the entirety of the 12.25 acres or a portion of it.
All right. Commissioners, do you guys have any questions?
None.
If not, I'd recommend a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
Is that Prater?
Yes.
You have a second?
Second.
Second from Byrd. Roll call vote, please.
Byrd,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Raider,
Yes.
Mowdy,
All right, that rezone is approved. Next item, Kim.
rezone from R1 to R4H, part of block 36, town of Cabot, and part of the southeast quarter of section 13, T-4-N, R-10-W, South Second Street, Bond Engineering.
Kevin, you want to give us a summary on this one?
Yes, sir. So you have in your Planning Commission report a zoning map amendment, which is the case here. There are two items that are separated out, but this is a report that deals with both because you have existing zoning of R1, but you have two portions of the property, each requesting a different zone. The first one along its frontage with South Second Street, they are requesting approximately 1.9 acres of that land be rezoned from R1 to C2. And then to the rear of that property, they are requesting to go from R1 to an R4H, approximately 4 acres of that. Now, in your report, and I was reviewing this, and I apologize for not discussing this in detail with staff prior to the meeting, but I did make a note in here that so that the applicant's proposing R4H. That is a high density residential, and the land use map actually doesn't call for that. Your policy map actually calls for something that's more in line with your R4M. The difference being R4H allows for 24 dwelling units per acre, whereas the R4M allows for half of that, 12 units per acre. If you look at the site plan before you, I think it's in one of your pages in your report, you'll see that there's the proposed R4H. Like I said, you're allowed to have up to 24 dwelling units per acre. But if I count up all of the units here, there's approximately 9 fourplexes. That would equate to 36 dwelling units. Now, if you include one of the existing dwellings as shown, that would be 37 units, or both of the existing dwellings, that would be up to 38. So I'm not exactly sure, and maybe the applicant can enlighten us. I would like to know if these two existing residences are all part of a single parcel, if they're going to be parceled out, because your density calculation, it matters based on what you're including. But regardless of that, between 36 and 38 dwelling units is being shown, and that provides an actual built density of around 8.8 dwelling units per acre to 9.3 dwelling units per acre. Well, the R4M medium density is 12 dwelling units per acre, or less than what's shown, but it's certainly nowhere near the 24 dwelling units per acre that an R4H would allow for. So that level of analysis, I do apologize, I wasn't able to perform that prior to this hearing, but I did want to make it known. I think it would behoove the commission to at least have the applicant explain why the need for the next class up, if you will, of R4H relative to R4M. And this is, of course, independent of the land use policy map, because whether you have high density or medium density shown on your policy map, I think that explanation relative to what's being requested should be explained. The only other outstanding item is, if you look at the proposed R1 to C2, there's a little triangle notch that actually is carved out close to Second Street. That actually is zoned R1 still, and it would need to be rezoned to C2 and included within the request. But other than that, there isn't much more to provide to the commission. You do have some R4H immediately and adjacent off further to the west. And you do have quite a bit of commercial zoning along its frontage. So overall, I don't think staff had a whole lot of concern with respect to what's being requested, only that perhaps they could provide an explanation as to why they need to double the density relative to what they're showing.
Is Aaron Robinson on?
Yes, sir. I'm here. Can y'all hear me, I guess?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So the reason that my client wanted to do the R4H was kind of twofold. One is the Chapel Ridge Apartments adjacent and the west side of this property is R4H. And the two houses that are existing, they plan on keeping those two houses and renting those, or one's a house and one's a duplex actually. And they plan on keeping those for the time being and renting those as well. They in a future date, They may end up tearing those down and putting up some more quadplexes. That probably still would not put us over the 12 units. I had done a few calculations here and there of what we could do, and it was borderline 12 to 13 units whenever I was working on stuff. And so that's kind of why we wanted to go towards the higher side, is because it was borderlining that 12 to 13 when we first started this.
So there could be some additional development for this tract of land that isn't being shown in the exhibit.
That is correct.
Okay.
I have a question. Are you taking in consideration the triangle that Kevin commented on earlier that's marked off of that residence that would need to be zoned C2? And is that, Kevin, I can't recall, the residence there would not be zone C2, just the triangle. And would that make a difference in downsizing the R4H area?
I think we might be speaking of two different, quote, triangles. I think exactly.
Okay.
I think that cursor, it's a very modest, it's a mapping issue really relative to
Okay.
parcels. I think you might be referring to a larger area of concern. This was really a very small area that was notched out. You can see the cursor. Yes, that's right. I'm not sure what the count is, or perhaps Mr. Robinson can explain why the survey pins are shown where they are, but we technically show it as still being zoned R1. That's all. It's just a portion of it that was not included in the survey boundary. That's all.
Okay.
Aaron, is that, and that's in the next line item, the one going R1 to C2, that's up front. So,
yeah, we can talk about it now, or we can talk about it when we get to that point.
let's go ahead and knock it out now, and we can vote on both of them.
Okay, so the little triangle part, I haven't actually done a research as to who owns that little triangle. It should be with this property, but whenever you look at the warranty deeds and you look at everything, that little notched triangle piece that's next to North 2nd Street is not being deeded with this property. So the legal description that I wrote was basically the legal description that went with the deed. And so we're going to have to do a little bit of research and try to figure out who actually owns that little triangle piece. I thought I'd found something whenever Chapel Ridge built the road. Something had happened in there, because that used to be the old driveway that went back to the Bailey house. And so I thought that piece of property was part of the Bailey and Chapel Ridge property, but it's kind of unknown at this time who owns it.
Yeah.
Kevin, could that, if we went to an R4M, and could that property that they might use for future triplexes, could that not be upgraded at that point to an R4H?
It's conceivable. It's a very small piece of land to go to such a high density category. I don't know that unless Laura can enlighten me, I'm not sure if there's precedent for that in the city. You typically don't do it.
Well, then we would then have we would have one piece of property that would have two zonings.
Okay.
Right, unless it's split off and platted as such. Right, exactly. And planners usually don't advocate for split zoning.
Correct.
Okay.
So the aim should be to zone land appropriately for either projects or for what you'd like to see from not only a legal boundary standpoint, but from a land use standpoint. And if we feel like the land uses are going to be appreciably different, then you certainly want to parcel them out. But I think to keep things clean, you certainly through your site plan review process would want to have things legally parceled out.
All right, on the rezoning for R1 to 4-H. If there's not any other questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve that. Commissioners.
I'll make the motion.
Motion from Chuck to approve. A second.
Second.
Second from Mowdy. Is that
Yes.
roll call vote, please?
Bird,
Yes.
Harlow,
Yes.
Prater,
Yes.
Rowdy,
Yes.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into the next one too. The rezone R1 to C2.
Commissioner, if I may jump in for just a moment. Aaron, just to let you know, I will need to make this go on to city council because I have to have the legal description attached to the legislation. I will need this triangle piece determined whether it's going to be rezoned or not be rezoned. So I will need that legal worked out as quickly as possible so that this can proceed on to next month's city council meeting for legislation.
I am going to call a abstract company in the morning to see if they can help me track this down.
Okay.
And I'll have you an answer.
Okay.
All right, Kim, do you need to, for the records, say the full name?
rezone from R1 to C2. Part of block 36, town of Cabot, and part of the southeast quarter of section 13, T-4-N, R-10-W, South 2nd Street, Bond Engineering.
All right, Kevin, is there anything we want to highlight on the front portion? I know we've talked a little bit about it already.
Well, aside from the small notch that Mr. Robinson's going to have hopefully dealt with an abstract professional, the one thing I did also want to show you is that the area that they would like to have zoned C2 that they show in their exhibit, it's not exactly matching the way our parcels and our zoning kind of, if you go to your graphic that shows your zoning, Chad, I can show that to you in one of the, there you go. So you can see that the cyan, the light blue, is the area that they show in their request. But you can also see that, right, that you see how that, what is it, that C2 zoned polygon to the north of the site, it kind of cuts it off right there. So I'm not sure if that's going to, if that is an error, if Mr. Robinson wants to speak to that. But that also needs to, we need to make sure that that parcel is smaller, or I'm not sure if that's a mapping error there. So if Mr. Robinson wants to elaborate, that's the only thing I observed.
Aaron, you want to?
I can't really speak to it. Whenever I looked online at the zoning map, what I saw had all that as R1. Everything on the other side of the street, there was some C2 over there, but that's why I included that whole area being C2. The triangle piece on the north side, if you're asking why there's an overlap there, I assume that is probably a mapping error on your account on the cities, because this goes around the old town, the block and lot system, which is parallel to North 2nd Street. And so I'm not really sure why that is squared off and not parallel the way that I have it shown.
So do you think that parcel is actually by deed might have been split to run along that line at a 45?
Well, the 45, the green line that I'm seeing, that's the back of that lot and block system, but which is part of the old town of Cabot, and that's part of the original deed.
Okay, so we're dealing with
the blue line. I'm not sure.
Well, the dark blue line is the official zoning map. The cyan line is the area boundary that you all submitted for your zoning request. I just wanted to make sure that we, at least according to the maps we have, a portion of your site is already zoned C2.
Right, and so I'm assuming that goes around the old UFO building. I don't know how to come up with a legal description based off of the map. I can guess. I mean, I don't know how to get that boundary exactly.
Well, I just wanted to bring it up for the record. We may, for an official request, need to reduce the amount of acreage that you're requesting to C2, because it does appear that there's a portion of your request area that's already zoned C2. And we just want to make sure that we're consistent with the acreage that you're asking for and what the council will rezone to.
And I can get with Laura tomorrow to see if we can pull something together that will take out that little corner that you already show us C2.
I can make a point to look at some of the other versions of our zoning map to see if anything has changed over time, but this is the most official one that I know to use. So we'd be happy to help you out, but I just thought I'd mention that for the record.
Okay. Aaron, is there anything else you want to add to that front portion?
No, sir.
All right, commissioners, I'd recommend a motion to approve if you guys don't have any other questions.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Bird, roll call, please.
Bird,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Prater,
Yes.
Howdy.
Yes.
All right, the rezone is approved. All right, we'll go ahead and close our public hearing at 8:05 and then roll into new business. And on your agenda, we're going to flip-flop these two. We have item A, site plan, item B, preliminary plat. We're going to tackle the preliminary plat first.
Preliminary plat, lot 1, J.A. Division, Bond Engineer.
All right, Kevin, if you would.
No problem. So in your staff report, you're provided with a general summary of where the property is, the 100 block of Bluebird Lane. It's a single parcel of record. There are a number of lots of this size along this stretch of Bluebird, as you can see in the graphic, many of which have already undergone redevelopment. And the dominant type of development that's happening here is your duplex, triplex type medium density residential, which is what the land use calls for, as well as the zoning. So the land use and the zoning and the platting are all consistent. And this is simply just to formalize the site and its boundaries relative to the eventual submittal for preliminary plat approval, which you will also be hearing this evening. There were a few items that staff had gone over with the applicant. There are a number of items, according to your report, that were not addressed. Those are shown in red highlight in the back of that staff report. Looks to me like that is page 5. There were several planning comments, comments 1, 2, and then forwarding to comments 12 and 13. And there was a comment that was outstanding from the water department. If you'd like me to go over those for the record, I'd be happy to, or if the commission has any questions regarding those items shown in red as not addressed, myself and or Laura would be happy to assist.
I think we could make approval based on the comments from staff as an amendment to that. Any questions from commissioners? If not, I need a motion to approve the preliminary plat with incorporating the comments from staff.
Prater makes a motion.
Motion from Prater. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Carlisle. Roll call, please.
Bird,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Prater,
Yes.
Howdy.
Yes.
All right, that preliminary plat is approved. Now we'll go back to the site plan.
Site plan, lot 1, J.H. Edition, Bond Engineering.
Okay, so this is the same site, just a different level of review. This is for the preliminary, I'm sorry, this is for the site plan, excuse me. This is a site plan review. It will have the existing parcel of record. They are proposing 3 duplexes and 3 triplexes. This would be 15 total units. The zoning is already in place and the land use has already been adopted. And so everything from that standpoint is consistent with city regulations. There are a few outstanding comments similar to the plating exercise. There are fewer outstanding items from the staff report. I could go over those if you would like. There's comment number 3 regarding half-street improvements, and then there's a small comment about labeling the right-of-way dedication. And then there's an outstanding comment from the fire marshal, and there's 1 outstanding comment from the water department. I will note that the half-street improvement along Redbird is required. I know that the applicant, there was some discussion about them wanting to waive the half-street. My understanding, and Ms. Nobles can qualify this, is that you cannot waive half-street improvements.
Correct. Unless commissioners have any questions, I'd recommend a motion to approve based on the comments from staff.
What was the comments from the fire department? Was everything okay in there?
Fire department shows that they needed to add the location for the existing hydrant and dimension it from the existing hydrant to the property line. Their plans showed a proposed hydrant, but they didn't actually line it up with the existing water supply. The water comment was very similar to that, by the way, which reflect existing and proposed hydrants. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Aaron, did you have any comments?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can address that if you want. Whenever I resubmitted this, some of these comments came back just because they weren't clear enough for me to answer. So we have to extend the water line across our property, which is not a big deal. And then they just want us to show the fire hydrant, which is, there's a fire hydrant right next door where the other duplexes and quadplexes are located. So all I've got to do is just basically show a dimension of how many, the fire marshal wants to make sure, I'm assuming that it's not more than 500 feet, which it's not. It's something like 250 feet or so.
Aaron, where's the dumpster at?
So, well, it's hard to see with the green space and everything that's actually required on your site plan, but it kind of lines up with all the others. Everybody accesses the dumpster off of Bluebird Lane. So there, if you look in the shaded area, it says enclosed dumpsters. Yeah, right there. That's where the enclosed dumpster would be.
So they pull in off of Bluebird Lane straight in?
That is, well, at an angle, yes, sir. They'd pull in, back up, and go on around. And that's the way Bluebird, Cardinal, all of them through there. That's the way that they access the dumpsters.
The little portion of drive, is that for a turnaround for the fire truck or a?
It is, yes, sir.
So they can hammerhead into that and then back out?
And yes, sir.
Laura, would you like to speak to the comment number 5 about the drainage report and the culvert calculations? I know that there was some information that was submitted, but there were some things that staff felt like were missing, and it's a fairly critical component of the review, at least from a plating standpoint. I'm not sure if the plat would ever be materially changed based on comment number 15 to necessitate another review, but I thought I would at least mention that for the record.
Aaron, you stated in your letter that you provided a drainage report with calculations, but our office never received that.
It should have been with all those rolled up plans and the BOA and everything else. I mean, I can email you a PDF of it anytime you want to see it.
Yeah, I'll need that drainage report because I'll have to
Okay.
make sure that our engineering consultant, make sure that the detention area is sufficient enough. And because we didn't get any on the grading plan, there wasn't, I don't believe that was shown so that he could justify the drainage calculations. So he didn't have anything to reference off of that.
The detention area was shown in the grading, but I'm actually sitting in front of my computer and I'm emailing it to you right now. I wish,
Okay.
I mean, had I known that it fell out or something happened to it, I would have emailed it to you earlier. I apologize for that.
Okay. And then what did y'all decide, Aaron, what did y'all decide on the half street improvements? I know in your letter back to me on these comments, you stated that you were going to request a waiver. We don't do waivers for half street improvements. Either the half street improvements have to be installed or they have to put up money in lieu of.
Well, so I've looked at trying to do a half street improvement through there, and it's so flat, and it's the road is in, I mean, the road needs some really bad TLC. And I'm afraid that if we try to do the half street improvements, it's just going to cause a bigger problem. So I've just got to figure out if they want to, I mean, I will send you an Excel spreadsheet with the cost, and they'll either write you a check or they'll do the half street improvements.
Okay.
And Aaron, can you assure us that the dumpster enclosure is not going to be on the sidewalk to impede the sidewalk? It looks like at the current layout, it's straddling that sidewalk, that if the corner of the enclosure would probably block the sidewalk entirely.
Well, so the dumpster, the way that fits in there, the dumpster will actually set back behind the sidewalk. And so the residents will walk down the sidewalk and walk down and then get on the sidewalk that's parallel to Cardinal, and then that's how they'll get their trash inside that dumpster.
Yeah, but if I'm riding my bike along Bluebird or whatever, and then coming down, and I mean, I got to drive out in the street to go around the dumpster.
Well, you'll have to do it on about 7 other developments. If you got to do it on this one, you'll have to do it on the others because they're all the same. And I have not driven down Bluebird or Cardinal to see how far they set those, if they set them all the way back or if they set them close to the road.
They should be set further back, and the fence enclosure should enclose the dumpster but not enclose the sidewalk.
And that's correct. And that's our intent.
Yeah.
All right.
Chad, all the others, the dumpster sits behind the sidewalk and the fence is behind the sidewalk. So the sidewalk is clear of any pedestrians walking.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
A motion to approve from Mowdy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Carlisle. Roll call, please.
Bird,
Yes.
Harwell,
Yes.
Prater,
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Site plan is approved. I'm assuming everybody that was contingent on bond fulfilling all the comments from staff. So
Correct.
Right, as well as the dumpster.
as well as the dumpster. Now it's okay to amend your approval with that caveat, correct?
Yes.
All right, guys, let's go to the next item on the agenda, replat.
about 71R and 72R, Cobblestone, Bill O'Brien.
Everybody hear me okay?
All right, where did my screen go? There we go. All right. Kevin?
Yes, sir. So we have, yes, sir. So your report is cobblestone lots. The existing lots are lots 70, 71, and 72. The applicant is proposing to essentially do a lot combination, turning 3 existing lots into 2. These would be the proposed lots as shown. The combined acreage for all of these 3 properties is just over half an acre. But their request is lot consolidation from 3 to 2 lots, proposed 71R at 0.31 acres and lot 72R at 0.24 acres. This subdivision is the one that we had looked at previously where years ago when it was approved, there was an ordinance that allowed administrative review and approval of setbacks that aren't necessarily exactly the same as what we'd find in the R2 zone. We're dealing with the 7-foot versus the 3-foot, if you could recall that, Mr. Commissioner, Chair. And this is that type of development. It could just be that the property owners or the builder wants to sell these with slightly larger lots, which is perfectly fine. But that's essentially what is being asked for here. Staff didn't have any outstanding comments from it. Land use and the zoning is obviously in place.
I think you realize too, you try to set a house on that, and that looks like that would be pretty tricky to get a house on each one of those 3 lots. So it looks like that makes a lot of sense from a size standpoint. Bill,
If you've been out there, it kind of slopes upward on that corner. I think in your report, there's actually a Google Street View, but it doesn't do it justice until you go out there. So,
sure. Applicant, do you have any comments? All right, seeing none, commissioners, you have any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the.
I think all he's trying to do is just even up those 2 lots, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. I make the motion for approval.
I got a motion from Prater to approve. Do I have a second?
Second,
Second from Byrd. Roll call vote, please.
Byrd,
yes.
Marlowe,
Yes.
Frank,
Yeah.
Mounty,
All right, that replat is approved. All right, this comes down to my favorite slide, community input. Does anybody have any input that you guys would like to share? Anybody online? Anything, Roger, from? Handful of watchers, but no questions posted. So, all right. Seeing none, I'd like to get a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion too.
Have a second?
Second,
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys. See y'all
Thank
next.
you.
Appreciate your time tonight.
Well,
Bye-bye.